Alright, folks. So, I recently finished a full-on remote viewing project here with Dustin Newcomb. And I reached out to him and, hey man, you got any targets in mind? He said, I'll put something together. So he did, and I started working on it. It turned out to be, and I just got feedback on this not too long ago, Edgar Allan Poe, the mysterious, macabre writer from the 1800s, who I'm familiar with. Was familiar with the dude's name, familiar with The Raven, Fall of the House of Usher, though not the full stories. I did see the movie The Raven with Vincent Price, where the wizards who were having a wizard battle. I remember that. I thought that was really cool. But that's pretty much the extent of my knowledge of Edgar Allan Poe. Now, after remote viewing him, I know quite a bit about him now, and the way he thinks. So this was a very tasty target. So these were the objectives here. The purpose of this remote viewing is to perceive, experience, and convey through controlled remote viewing, or my hybrid protocols, information regarding the details of the events starting September 27, 1849, leading to the death of the person known as Edgar Allan Poe, October 7, 1849. So really, Dustin's objective here was to see what I would be able to perceive about specifically about his death. And as it turns out, the death of Edgar Allan Poe is mysterious. I didn't know that. And there's a lot of speculation about what might have happened. A lot of that came in the final two sessions. A lot of that stuff came in, and it was really, really pretty interesting. So that's the tasking here. Variables, he set up a B, C, D, and E subtaskings, and these were again revolving around that period here. This one, the causes of his death, at the time, mental psychological state that he was in at the time. Let's see, his health at the time, and anybody around him at that time associated with him. So those parameters really pretty isolated in on what may have happened to him. And again, the final two sessions, a lot of that stuff comes through. But what else comes through in these sessions, which is really interesting to me, are things that seem to reference his stories that he wrote. Referencing his stories. And as I contemplate the remote viewing of this dude and his who he was as a linguist, which is what's going to come through in the first session here, and how the characters of his stories might possibly be people that he was associated with. And again, since I don't know too much about Edgar Allan Poe, I can't say that that is true or not, but it definitely, a lot of those references that can be referenced back to his stories, I've gone and researched some of them, and it's there. It's there. Now, my analysis of the work could continue on because there's a lot of stuff in here to try to find the references, but I did find some pretty key, obvious references in the session. So let's just go through session number 1. 27 pages. This is a big session. Some low stuff here, magnificent floral accounting or an account of something, watching, testifying. These are the interesting things here that came in the beginning. Mystify, an account of something, bleeding, testifying, bringing, flying, catching, double, split. But these were interesting here. Right off the beginning, calculated an event, something that this tasking was related to an event or the story or an accounting of something. And I saw this here, which is what I saw here as well. And I wasn't quite sure what it was. But it was like a patch or a medal or a trophy to represent something to someone. Now, I couldn't find any references to it, and I'm not sure what his military badges were. And that was another thing. I didn't know he was a military guy, but that came through in the session, and I don't know if that may have been something from that. But what does it represent, though? I wonder. It's like a battle, I question, or an achievement, I question that as well. Like an award. Now, I wonder if he got awards, what his award would look like. That's something I'd have to go and look up. There are probably some literary awards he probably acquired after his death, and maybe something looks like that. To achieve something outstanding, that would be the award. And I think he would qualify for that. What area, though, I wonder? And my aesthetic impact here was I want to go into science, meaning that the area that I'm right off the start here, I'm perceiving someone, and they're achieved. And I'm not sure exactly what area they're achieved in. And I wanted to go into the area of science. But I wanted to kind of put that kind of in the close, but I'm not 100% sure range here. So I got these things. Investigation, like a news reporter or an investigator. But investigating what, though, I wonder? To get to the bottom of something. But what's at the bottom, I wonder? A 24-hour cycle. These things were all revolving around someone who documents things, reports on things, and investigates things. Investigating a 24-hour cycle, but what does that mean, though? I'm wondering. Understanding a rhythm or a pattern or a choice or a code. To get through something, penetrate or break through into something like a story, which is what it really was. That the reporter here, the investigator, he wanted to break through into a story. And I'd say that's what Poe's stories are like. Like what's inside of something? Like a shell, I wonder. And what's interesting about that reference to a shell is that his first successful book, actually his best-selling book, was about seashells. I didn't know that till I was researching it, but it's true. Is that right? His best-selling book during his lifetime was A Guide to Seashells. And the shell element came up here a couple times. Okay, but again, wanting to break through to get through to something or see what's inside of something. What is inside of something? Type of penetrating waves, like sound waves or something along those lines. The notion was to see what is inside of something. Trying to find out what's inside. Is it? But then I have to question it. Are we talking something physical, non-physical, spatial, organic, non-organic? I get the concept, but I wasn't quite sure exactly what it was related to. Oh, so I asked the question, what does it relate to? Penetrating into something or cracking something open or exposing it, finding it and releasing it. A different aspect here is the idea here of something raining down. And I'm not quite sure exactly what. But it's a person here. Who is this? And I'm wondering. That is reminding me of all this. The idea of a shell game, again, goes back to the shell reference. But what does that even mean, though, I wonder? Moving pieces around, moving things around. I don't even know what that means. Moving what? An expansive idea. Expansion outwards or moving out. Crazy ideas. These were crazy ideas. Like what, though, I'm wondering? Spreading or stretching things out, making them last longer, expanding out. Even things along lines. But they were just crazy ideas. Like a communication line. This person has ideas, making things, exploring and finding. So now I'm getting into the actual person. Here. This person feels a bit distant, maybe a little bit cut off even. He's a big reader, he's a writer, an author of sorts. So I'm on that I'm dealing with a writer and an author. But what does this person write about, though, I wonder? Lifestyle, predictions. He's kind of like an H.G. Wells kind of guy. Again, a bit sci-fi, which I later found out that he was into things more kind of sci-fi metaphysical stuff as well. He looks at the progression of things, the movement of things into other things. Inventor, stylist, a bringer of something. But of what, though, I wonder? Some types of new perspectives on things. Then I was at a location here. Flat area, natural and man-made were around here. Open area. Felt kind of desert-like to me. Like a long road or platform. Felt very mellow. What is special about the area, though, I wonder? Bit of a distant feel. Area feels like there's something here and it relates to the target. But what is here? What about it? There's an above and below element here. And it's spacious down here, above and below. The underground area feels wide and open, spacious and big. A large underground area. But what about it, though, I wonder? There's something here. But what, though? Document. Something documented, a record of something, texts, documentation. But about what, though? Someone, I wonder? There's something here that feels like a warning or cautionary, like a cautionary tale. Sounds a lot like his writings here. Cautionary tales. But I had to wonder if that was dealing with his grave site here. And I have to wonder if he's in some kind of a catacomb. And maybe if they buried some of his writings with him. I wouldn't have done it. Information about someone, though, I question. Well, what about them? It's their history, their story. It's like a book or biography. Outstanding letters and prints, which I had to go and find. These letters and prints, of which there are many. There are many of them. But about who, though, I wonder? What's important about all this? Someone considered outstanding, but why? Their strength, their skill? Definitely their skill. Location-wise, again, I'm back here in this area. It seemed like kind of a rocky perimeter. Lines can be seen here from above. There's some man-made things here. Back to the person. The person has interesting ideas and thoughts, but like what, though, I wondered? How to do things. How to do things like what? Talking and or language. They're a linguist. The sounding out of things. Syllables. A way of talking. And that's why I found that he studied at the University of Virginia ancient and modern languages. He studied languages. He was a linguist. Some of his hobbies. He was a good linguist who had an excellent grasp of the English language, but he also knew other languages quite well. He had an interest in cosmology, and his work Eureka, a prose poem, shows some ideas ahead of their time that may have recently begun to be appreciated. Those are some kind of esoteric, and I get into those as well. He was a linguist. Well, what do I mean here, talking? Meaning that the person had a way with words. What does that even mean? Knows the meanings and origins of words. Because of this, this person can arrange thoughts in a very unique way. But what is the benefit, though, I wonder? The notion is that it is eye-opening and mind-opening. The expansion of a language and or communication. See, once he starts really coming through here, this is what, if I would have had an opportunity to talk to Edgar Allan Poe, it would have been related to this here, his understanding of words and language and his utilization of them, which was really, really fascinating to me. So here I drew a picture of him, and this person would say, you don't understand words. Without that understanding, you can't understand ideas, real ideas. So he was a real wordsmith, a real scholar of what words mean. So I had to ask the question, what is a real idea? A vast thought, an encompassing thought. This could become intoxicating or mind-altering. Intoxicating or mind-altering. Those are some of the things that I have read that were back in those days. People would read his stories or whatever, and it would be a mind-altering. It would have an intoxicating effect on people. Probably still does. How does this person know how to do all this, though, I wonder? The idea of a historian, a lecturer, explorer, someone who went looking for it, learned it, researched, read, found old texts, learned the languages. And that's really what I was able to find here, is that he really did do that. He was well learned. And here's one of the books, Learned It, Nothing is Free, meaning the importance, or in this person's mind, learning was very, very important, and nothing is free, meaning you really shouldn't take advantage of it. Exploring other countries, other cultures, learning the languages, which I confirmed, into the old cultures, old belief systems, and ways of life. A studier of life, really. A person who studied and learned how to look at things. This was really interesting because as I'm getting into the mind of this person and how they're doing what they're doing, these are the notions that I am finding myself in the middle of. A person who studied and learned how to look at things. What does that even mean, though, I wonder? Tells the story. Like telling someone else's story for them. And in some ways, also becoming that person. And this is an interesting phrase right here, because as I went through and was doing some research on his stories that he wrote, they were, he would tell them from the perspective of some unknown person, like some invisible person who's watching these other people's lives, and he's documenting them, which is like what I'm experiencing here. But how so, I wondered? Like an old yogi. If you study the yogi, you take on yogic elements. Life extension ideas, universal mind, transferring ideas, passing it along. What if he taps into something he doesn't want, though, I wondered? Meaning that, what if this individual is going through all of these things and he's studying the yogi here, or these universal mind ideas, and comes upon something that he might not really want to be coming upon? Personal responsibility. Seems like the kind of guy that would probably say that. He's cultured, well-read, he's a student, traveling with books, letters and prints. This was really interesting here, was the letters and prints, the prints idea. Writing books. Somebody who was considered outstanding in philosophy and scientific thoughts. Like bringing philosophy and science together into a shared outlook. This person would have a bright mind. And some of the interesting things here, I got a reference here that goes back to even a previous thing too. The type that would go into a type of meditation space for weeks at a time. But why would he do that? To get a hold of ideas, to ground them and organize the thoughts, then bring them to others to dispute them. I did find this reference that Edgar Allan Poe would use various, what can be called hypnagogia, or going into a mild altered state. And then in an attempt to tap into creative ideas and stuff like that. He's one of many, but I learned through this that he did those things. So he would go into a type of in-between mind state, or a meditative state, and go and explore either his own creativity or his creative ideas. Why would he do that, I asked? To get a hold of the ideas. Oh yeah, I did that already. So I saw this face, and it was a very intense looking face. Very intense. He was a traveling person. The face was hardened. He has seen many things in many places. You can see this person in foreign places, even in times of war. Observing, watching, learning, studying, science, biology, anatomy, physics. I did find this reference here. This is his military stuff. But he did go to Europe and studied in Europe as well. And he was in the military too, which I found out through remote viewing. Like splicing things together, making new things, going into the unknown. But why, I wonder? The advancement. Dedicated to advancement. But to what end, I wonder? What is he trying to figure out? Is what I'm trying to get from all this. Okay, he's doing all this stuff and studying, and he's even learning about war and death and all this kind of stuff. But what's he trying to figure out is what I'm wondering here, in all this complexity. What question is he trying to answer, I'm wondering? Is it a life question or death? What is on the other side of the veil? I'd say so. A student of war, studying war, living in a wartime. And I did find out he was in the military. He was at West Point, though he did get kicked out of the military because he wasn't that great of a soldier, but he did have some accomplishments there. But the studying of war and death, I think, was a big deal. Living in a time of war. In his meditations, putting himself into these situations, playing out scenarios, playing out the decisions and how they did it versus how he might do it. See, this is where I wonder in his military career if that's where a lot of his doom and gloom notions came from. When studying and contemplating war and death in his mind, these were some quotes. The mind is a safe place to try new things and ideas, he would say. You can erase them and start over. You can't do that on a battlefield. So how do you make decisions in that environment? ? Life and death. That being one fascination of many. But what other fascinations have I contemplated? Movement, cycles, electricity, power, physical energy and physical movement. How movement happens in its relationship to the planets, perpetual rotation, movement. The idea of things move because everything is moving, and the forces within that is interesting. Rotational field, something being encompassed or organized. Seeing the organization of things, cause and effect, finding or seeing perpetual motion, centrifugal forces. And these are some references to that, which I had no idea. But apparently there was a period in his life where he was seriously into these type of things. He wrote this story called Eureka. Is Poe's attempt at explaining the universe, using his general proposition that because nothing was, therefore all things are, which kind of reminds me of this. Things move because everything is moving. And seeing the organization of things. These kind of universal mind notions. In Eureka, Poe discusses man's relationship to God and the universe, or as he offers in the beginning, I designed to speak of the physical, metaphysical, and mathematical, of the material and spiritual universe, of its essence, its origin, its creation, its present condition, and its destiny. I didn't know Edgar Allan Poe was such a spiritualist, but I do now. This is his book where he really was get into that. And apparently he would go out and do lectures as well. And I had it earlier on that the person was going out and doing lectures on these types of things. But they were into this kind of universal movement here. The organization of cause and effect kind of stuff. But what does he find out though, I wonder? Scientific, literature, something outside of something like a seed. Something out of something. Perpetual movement, perpetual growth. The God effect. Which is what apparently was a big thing in his mind. A naturalist, the power of nature. Natural energy. What does that mean, natural energy? What does that even mean? Like a resonance. What do you mean, a resonance? Like a Schumann resonance? Shaking, vibrating, stimulating. Stimulating the nucleus of something. What does that even mean? Like turning on some kind of a current, pulsating, activating the on-off switch, the pattern. What gives or stimulates life, which is really what this is about. Here, the material and spiritual universe. I just had no idea he was really into this kind of stuff. This person watches this and participates in this, he, like an experimentist, he would say, follow the signal. To find things or something you need to follow, you need to follow the signal. I wonder if I can find something related to that. I probably could. Follow it into something to see the stimulation, the creation, the metamorphosis, the explosiveness, the merging into other things, the blending and mixing. He's like an alchemist, researching, finding. And there he is, and then there's also a female here. But he's also a historian of sorts. Of what? History of what, though, I wonder? His research goes back far, even into Babylonian times. The structure of history. This was really the interesting element here. The structure of history. This person would say, if you don't have a structure of history, you have no sense of reality. And there he is writing about it. He would say, you have no sense of reality. The calculation of self-worth. He's writing here, correspondence and documentarian. But what is he looking for, I wonder? The soul of mankind? I'd say so from his stories. But how, though? In other people's stories. Here's another quote. If it's not documented, it is lost in time. He would sit with them, and he would contemplate how was it done. He would say, the testament of a man's soul is in his writings. Oh, I'd say that would really describe him. The testament of a man's soul is in his writings. I wonder if he actually said that. But what did he find, though, I wonder? What did he conclude? It's a mystery. What compels a human being? Is it survival? Is it instinct? Is it God? Is it animalistic? I'm in his thoughts here. The observation of someone or people caught up in something. How do they make decisions? How do they move forward, I wonder? He's an observer, a watcher, watching the cause and effect. What will they do, he wonders. How will they react, he contemplates. The calculation of probability, the calculation of ideas, perceiving them together to form a larger picture. It reminds me of John Lilly entering into ideas to see what effect they would have on his mind. I'd say that Edgar Allan Poe was an early version of John Lilly. John Lilly invented the sensory deprivation tank, and he would go into the tank and explore beliefs or ideas, even ones that he didn't agree with, but just to see how his mind would react to them. I think Edgar Allan Poe is very similar. Moving in and out of beliefs, delving into them, then removing himself from them and studying the effect. That's probably what a lot of his books are like. But what's the purpose, though, I wonder? To study, or learn, or expand, create new and original thoughts, create new ideas, new solutions, new combinations, injecting new ideas into the crowd, see how they react, see what changes come about. See how it expands and changes. We need the minds of others to expand thought. If an idea is injected unknowingly, you can watch and see how it organically will evolve or devolve. Like science experiments with thoughts and ideas, pooling them. What does that mean, pooling them? Like a think tank, utilizing the power of other minds. Using the power of other minds, understand language to explore potential. That was a first session. And I have to wonder, I did read something where the effect that his stories were having on people back in those days was really a big deal. Even made him pretty dangerous. Made him dangerous. Putting these kinds of macabre kind of word puzzles in people's minds like that. Really, really fascinating. Really, really fascinating. So that's session number 1. And it goes on from there. So session number 2 coming up soon. I'm going to still continue doing my research to put a lot of this stuff together because these were some really interesting ideas, and more to come.